What's up, guys? Blade Master here, and you're watching the Wolf of Primus Total War channel. And I've got another episode in our tutorial series, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about how to use chariots. So I'll just start with a basic introduction of chariots and the different types of chariots there are, and what are their pros and cons, and how best to use them, and a couple of ways to counter them as well. So, two types of chariots are there. There's the Scythed Chariots, which are available to Egypt and Seleucids. I'm struggling to think if there's any other faction which has access to chariots. I don't believe so. Oh, and Pontus, of course, and Pontus. So the side chariots are available to these three factions, whereas Britain chariots, which are the other type of chariots, are obviously only available to Iceni. So there are a bunch of differences between the two, but I'll go over them later. For now, I'll just quickly go over the unit stats for the side chariots. So side chariots have amazing stats, as you can see. They have low melee defense, but apart from that, they have very good stats, including 95 health and 90 armor, which are very strong. So the pros of chariots are they are very maneuverable, very quick. Um, Number two is they are very resilient to missile attacks. So it's going to be pretty hard to try and find a counter to them. And number three, they can cause a massive number of casualties in a couple of seconds. So there's a lot of really good things associated with chariots. And for their price of only 1380, which, I mean, it sounds like a lot, but for a unit that can easily get around 300 plus kills in a game, it's not really all that much if you think about it. So they're good value for money. So what are their and they have a bunch of positives. So what are their cons? Well, one, if they're caught by enemy cavalry, it almost spells doom for them. They're very susceptible to cavalry, so you can only use them against infantry. Uh, Number two is if they get bogged down by either heavy armor infantry or multiple lines of infantry, and they can't move through them, then they won't get many kills at all and they'll die. So they're not very resilient to mass, unlike elephants. So that's the second negative for them. And well, in case of the Iceni chariots, you just need to be a bit more careful in how you use them. But I think that just about covers up. And of course, they don't have any fear effects. But their massive number of casualties should be more than enough to to compensate for that. So in this battle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a bunch of clips where I've used chariots effectively and ineffectively. And this first one is just a match where I played against some random guy on quick battle. This is my usual Egypt build. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I don't really like to take elephants with Egypt because almost everyone presumes that you're going to take elephants with either Egypt or Seleucid. So I like to surprise them and take chariots who can do just as good, if not better, job against infantry than elephants. Than elephants. Um, However, elephants are more versatile, but they are very susceptible to missiles. So that's why I tend not to take them, at least for Egypt. So now that I've listed the pros and cons of side chariots, I'll move on to trying to explain how best to use them. So a pretty beginner mistake that many people make is that they tend to take and it's not just a beginner mistake. Even I make these mistakes a lot of times. Is that they tend to take or they tend to move their side chariots very early. Um, and side chariots they are very effective in general, but they are much more effective as a late game unit, and this applies especially to Britain chariots. So now let's go ahead and try and figure out the best way to use chariots. So as you can see, there were two ways that I could have moved my chariots. One was to plow straight through my infantry into his, and the second would be to take either of these flanks and try and hit him either from the flanks or from the rear. So I've chosen the second option. I've tried to go to go around the enemy infantry line. Meanwhile, I'm also showering them with flaming missiles. Um, so the reason why I've taken the extra time to not plow through my infantry is that, like I said earlier, one of the cons of chariots is that they're very susceptible to mass, if that makes sense. If they're moving through a bunch of units, the amount of mass that they need to pass through in game increases by a lot, And once they have to pass through a lot of units, whether it's friendly or enemies, it's easier for them to get bogged down. And if they're not, you need to keep chariots constantly moving. That's the trick of using chariots. So if they can't move, they'll die very quickly. So that's why you need to try and find the easiest way you can get a decent charge off. And from there, all you need to keep doing is keep issuing a move order, like not a move order, a run order. So try and double right click across the enemy's line. So like I moved my chariots from the left to the right, just cutting through the enemy. Now, the reason why I used this video was the way I moved my chariots is a pretty decent way to use chariots. Instead of plowing through your infantry, by moving across the backs of the enemy infantry, you'll cause a lot more casualties, and you'll suffer a lot less casualties for your scythed chariots. Oh, and before I forget, the reason why I put my archers on flaming shot was that coupled with a large amount of casualties that I expected these chariots to create, um, an additional morale penalty from the flaming shot would have been devastating to enemy infantry. So that's why I changed. In case you were wondering. So this just continues what I was talking about mass and how it affects chariots. In this one, I'm playing as the RDAI, and I've taken my front line has got four noble hoplites, and I've put them in hoplite phalanx. So when you have hoplite phalanx on, you can see that they are incredibly closely packed together. Just look at these guys, very very close. So they have increased mass, and I've also supported them with some axe warriors. So now the chariots that are passing through have to pass through their own troops, then they have to try and pass through the hoplite phalanx, and finally they're going to have to try and pass through the axe warriors. So that's a lot of mass for the side chariots to try and pass through. And as you can see, they aren't moving; they're bogged down, and now they're just having or my opponent's having a lot of difficulty just trying to move them and try and use them to cut through my line. They're racking up some kills, 29, etc. But this just goes to show that you can't always use side chariots to directly plow through your line. Although it definitely could work sometimes. In this one, it's just that he's bogged down, and I just wanted to try and prove that mass plays probably the biggest role in trying to stop enemy chariots. So let's try and see the kill count. 49, but they've already lost, and 4, 5. They've lost a lot of chariots, and they've only managed to inflict around 90 kills. That might not sound too bad, but for a unit like chariots, which costs quite a bunch, you'd want to expect around 250 to 300 kills at least. Now, what units are chariots most effective against? I did mention that they are best used against infantry, but among infantry, the absolute best infantry to use them against are low armor infantry like the Swabi and Lusitani, and non-formation attack units. So mainly just like barbaric units. Although formation attack units will die just as quickly to chariots, but they always have the increased chance of having larger mass. Whereas non-formation attack units, since they have no mass, it's just that you're going to find a lot of free space in between the units, so it'll be easier for you to kill them. So in this one, I'm playing as Seleucids, and I've played against Swabi, and I did a pretty similar tactic. I just moved my chariot to one flank, the flank that was relatively unguarded, and then just went to town. 205 kills already, and this I've put the replay. They've only been attacking for the past 5 seconds, and now they're just plowing through this way along the backs of these sword masters. 225 kills already, and now I'm just using them to get as many units as they can. So they've attacked the Bloodsworn as well. Yeah, their kill score is just counting. And over here, you might think that there's a lot of mass over here, but the point is that they cannot be braced because you're attacking them in the rear. So once you attack them in the rear, they cannot be braced, so the whole question of mass doesn't really even come into play. So yeah, 337 kills, and this I didn't even use them the best. Like, I didn't time them great, but when it comes to units like Lusitani and Swabi, it's just very very easy to use chariots, because even their spear infantry, while they might have expert charge defense and that might be beneficial against a unit such as elephants, it's not going to do a lot of damage against chariots, because they don't have formation attack, and I believe only if you put them in shield wall, then it would make a massive difference. But if you don't, then the chariots are going to have a field day like they are in this clip. Another pro that I forgot to mention is that unlike elephants, you can hide chariots in forests. And another con that I forgot to mention is one of the disadvantages of using chariots is that you have to micro them constantly. So you have to be prepared to let go of controlling your other units for a short period of time if you're going to use chariots. So here's an example of how not to use chariots. In the previous examples, I always tried to move my chariot around, and in this one, I've just decided to go ahead and charge Roman troops kind of through my own infantry, and attack them straight from the front. Uh, so as you can see, only 7 kills on my chariots, although a couple of them have gotten behind the enemy infantry. However, if I'd just taken the extra couple of seconds it would take to, get into a more favorable position and then attack this way and go across the Roman infantry line, it would have been a lot better. Already I've lost 1 unit and I've only got 48 kills. Now, one of what I said before about unarmored troops, the opposite applies here, because Roman troops are very armored and they all have formation attack. So you're not going to do really well with your side chariots if you attack them head on, like how I did in this replay. So you need to go around and then attack them from behind. And just as a reminder of what you have to do with chariots is that you got to keep double right clicking, keep using a move order to move them across. And over here my opponent plays very well, and he does a great maneuver and catches my side chariots with his cavalry. So that also kills them very very quickly. As you can see, even though I didn't really use them all that well, some of them got behind the infantry line, and when they attacked them from the rear, they caused a mass number of casualties. So you can only imagine how good it would have been if I had moved to one flank and then attacked them like I usually do. So yeah, just a note on how best to use chariots. It varies pretty differently from unarmored to armored factions, especially Romans who have very very strong infantry. You always want to attack them from the rear or from the flank, not from the front. So before I wrap things up, I just wanted to quickly go over the pros and cons and a couple of quick notes about side chariots. I'll make a separate video about Britain chariots later. The only reason I'm not making one now is because I don't really have many clips or many highlights of my Iceni battles. And anyways, a lot of my battles are desynced because of the patch changes and stuff. So I'll just make this video only about side chariots. So quickly going over the pros and cons. The pros of chariots are: 1, they are very quick. They're also very maneuverable. 2, they are pretty resistant to missile attacks. 3, they can be hidden. And 4, they cause a large number of kills in a very short span of time. Now, the cons of side chariots are that they are very susceptible to enemy cavalry. 2, if they get bogged down, they're basically worthless. 3, they're very micro intensive. So once you attack with your side chariots, you have to be prepared to not use your other not pay as much attention to other units. So that's a bit of a negative on their side. And of course they're not they don't have great morale, which is another thing. 65 morale is not bad, but the point is that they only have 9 units. So that kind of means that if they lose a couple or more, maybe 3 units quickly, then there's a very good chance that they'll shatter and rout almost immediately. Another kind of just general tip: when you're taking chariots in an army, you want to make sure that you've spent adequate money on building up a decent cavalry force. The reason is that you want to have at least four or preferably five or six cavalry units in your army, and the reason being that you want to catch your enemy's cavalry as soon as possible, and hold them in place, or either hold them in place or defeat them as soon as possible. Because once that's done, then a major obstacle to your chariots is over, and um, you know, if your chariots don't come under any pressure from enemy chariots or enemy cavalry, then they can like move freely and cause a lot of damage. In this replay, my opponent didn't take any cavalry. He only took two cavalry units. One of them chased my chariots down, but they got intercepted by my thorax swordsman. The point is that I brought a total of six cavalry units so that I had numbers to surround him, etc. So my cavalry, so my chariots were free to pursue his infantry units. So that's the end of this battle, guys, and that's the end of this tutorial video as well. I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and you learned a little bit more about chariots and how best to use them, and good ways to counter them as well. And I'll be back with another episode of the tutorial series pretty soon. I'm not sure what I'd focus on next. Maybe the Britain chariots, or maybe some other units. I'm open to suggestions, of course. So let me know if you want me to focus on any unit, or if you find this helpful at all. And until next time, guys. Peace.